worked with us to do a lot of the extra things as part of the sales tax program. A lot of the single term items, they've made a huge difference. Getting QTEX, which is the air conditioning units on portables, replaced. It's a nonstop cycle for them. And they've really been a huge asset and a huge addition to the program to make sure that we get as much of this work done as quickly as we can.
Yeah, David Porter again. For a short-term problem, let's say within the next couple of years, let's hope it goes away and we can take care of the deferred stuff. I guess the role of this committee will have to make some hard decisions if we get to the 10th year and we're near the end of the program and inflation has continued and we don't have any more money to take care of the items we are deferring. And who knows if that'll happen. Let's just hope it doesn't, but we'll have to be mindful of that as we continue on with the program.
Yes.
Because the first go ahead, Leanne.
I was just going to say, as items are deferred, they are being identified. You'll see those when we get to the proposed plan modification, and we're keeping a list of those. So it's not that we're intending to just not do this and forget about it. We are going to maintain the list. ISSOC will be able to see that and monitor it. And as Dave mentioned, we do have within our 10-year plan that we did when the sales tax program started, we planned a significant increase in funds for maintenance to do deferred maintenance, with the goal being that we would be able to get caught up and everything would work well. And that money is still planned to come in. It's dependent on property tax revenue. So that's something else that we're monitoring closely. And I don't have any idea of what might happen with property tax revenues going forward. But it's something that we're looking at, all those components and all the revenue sources, because your list is a list of tasks. And it doesn't really, you've got some that are to be funded with sales tax and some that are funded with other sources. So now we may be adding items, moving things from sales tax over to items to be funded with other sources, but we will be tracking all these items.
Okay, if we can go to that last slide. I've got one last slide that I want to make sure. So in summary, keeping in mind the challenges that we talked about, the increased prices, we believe that the Cool, Safe, Drive, Bright strategy that I've described can meet the current challenges. But we need to understand that the continuing needs of our facilities will exceed the scope of the work in that referendum. It's a continuing challenge. The original referendum, which was done 4 years ago, now we really need to consider future referendums in order to deal with our future facility needs within the district. So this isn't, what I'm trying to put out there and make everybody understand is that this may not be the end of it. The needs may continue on for our facilities. So with that, that is the end of our presentation on the sales tax. Are there other questions?
It would seem like there are none. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to move to the next presentation then. Move this over. And this, for the people on the phone, this is the quarterly sales tax summary. This is the report that the committee is used to seeing. And as I mentioned before, there are a couple of slides that are identical and some that are very close. So I'll skim through some of this. So this slide is exactly the same as the one you saw earlier, just showing the receipts and the expenditures. This slide is a little different, and I'm going to try to zoom in and make this a little bigger so that it's easier to see. You do have this in your package, and I sent you links. It's available on board docs and on the website. Is that better? Can you see the numbers, or should I try to make it bigger still? Seeing heads nodding. Okay. Yeah. Some of this is exactly the same. It shows the original budget, the current budget, the change since the last meeting, the cumulative change. And Mr. Porter, this gets to what you were asking for. So for sales tax reserve, after the items are approved today, we'll have $4.4 million left currently funded available in the budget. So the rest of it will be coming in future years. So this is the funded to date after assuming all the proposed changes are approved. It's what will be available today. The expenditures through the end of December, purchase orders, these were the same. These two are a little different. This is the percentage of the total referendum that's committed to date, and committed is expended or under contract. So this number is comparing the total budget to what's been committed. So 23% of the facility renewals, 30% of technology infrastructure, 40% of vehicles, and then you get into projects funded with other sources. Those are getting started, so that number is going to start growing quickly. And then this number over here is same thing, committed, but it's comparing it to the funds that are available. So it's going back to what's funded to date. So of the money that's available today, 50% of the facility renewals are either spent or under contract. That number is going to go up significantly in the next couple of months, assuming everything gets approved and the board approves all the contracts. And there's a lot of contracts going to the board April 29th. Some of these numbers will grow. But you can see, for instance, school buses and vehicles, they're doing a great job at spending the money as soon as it becomes available. Technology, there's a lot of work that there's work pending on our phone system and other pieces. That number is going up as well. And as I said, there's a lot of contracts coming up, and this number will grow significantly before you see it next. Any questions on this slide? It is a little different than what we saw before. Okay, let me go back to 100%, and that way the screens will roll right. We've talked about the forecast again. I'm not going to go through that. It's the exact same slide, but you've had some more time to brew on it. So if you have any questions, I'll stop again just in case there are any other questions on the forecast. Nope. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. We're now to the proposed plan modifications, and I'm going to turn this over to Dave to walk through what we're requesting and the changes that we have coming. And I've bundled them together. Hopefully that helps as he's walking through them all. So Dave, you've got it.
Okay, just had to find my mute button, sorry. Yes, as Leanne mentioned, she has thankfully packaged each of the PPMs up so that they are in line with each other. These first three PPMs, 54, 55, and 56, they all refer to what I mentioned earlier, and you've seen a lot before, of items where these are on out-year programs, and there's a particular scope that must be done right away. You'll notice 54 is at Dwyer High School. There's $150,000 for air conditioning work, air handlers that need to be done. That's a project that's scheduled for 21, but we're asking to move 150,000 forward, and which time we will, in 21, we will recover that money in the reserves. 55, Loggers Run. This is the intercom system, the intercom head end. That's the main brains, if you will. The control panel for the intercom system was in desperate need of replacement. While it was in FY23, we're asking to bring the money forward so that we can get it taken care of right away. And on 56, the Boca Raton Middle has some drainage problems. And again, that was something that in FY27, we certainly didn't want to wait that long. This is a challenge that needs to be resolved right away. But we're asking to move 172,000 forward to cover those. Next slide.
What I might like to do is, as we go page by page with your explanation so that they're fresh in our minds,
Sure.
Let's go ahead and vote on those and make sure there's no objections, and then we're done with those. Leanne, that sound all right?
It does. And I'd also mention, if you have any questions on any of these, the actual proposed plan modification document that shows the details of money being moved back and forth from year to year, we have that as an attachment. It was available to you prior to the meeting, and it's online. This is just a summary. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to bring those up as well.
So let's go ahead with these three. Anyone have any objections to these? Go ahead and either wave your hand or speak up. Okay, seeing none, these are good. Next page.
Okay. As a precursor to this, our construction department is taking 8 GMPs to the board next week. 8 facility renewal GMPs. 3 of those 8 projects, we are here asking for additional funds in order to get some critical components addressed in those GMPs. I'm kind of alluding to the fact that the next PPM on the next slide talks about all 8 of those projects will have certain scope items that will be deferred, even with the funding on these 3 PPMs. So I talked to Mr. Porter about this, and I'm certain I confused him more during our discussions, but I wanted to make sure that it was understood that the funding that we're asking for here on PPMs 57, 58, and 59 don't cover the entire scope. Even with this funding, there are still certain non-cool, safe, dry, bright scope items that will be deferred for a later time. So if I may, on 57, that is Wellington High School. We're asking for an additional $863,000. What I'm showing here, what I'm referring to here is, in the past, you all at ISSOC have asked me, okay, you're asking for additional money. What was it that was so expensive or so much more expensive that you needed additional money? And that's what I'm identifying on these PPMs. So that when I say the shortfall is exterior storefronts and electrical scope and classroom lighting and HVAC, that's to say that if we had only anticipated $150,000 in storefront and it's really $350,000, the storefront needs to be done. It's absolutely critical to be done. So where does that extra money come from? Well, that's what we're trying to get to. I'm trying to ask for additional money to cover those. So that's the shortfall for Wellington High. Forest Hill Elementary, asking for an additional $1.5 million. The shortfalls on that, it's primarily the roof replacement. I think out of the 1.2 or so was an entire roof replacement that was not anticipated. There was a small amount of money in there for some roof repairs and maintenance, but when we looked at it, it became apparent that the entire roof needed to be replaced, and it needed to be replaced now. So we're asking for that additional money there. PPM number 59. Pioneer Park, we're asking for an additional $686,000, and that is primarily for classroom lighting, which again I talked about before. It's something that we found to be imperative for the improvement of the schools, as well as a lot of electrical work. Pioneer Park needed quite a bit of extra work that was unanticipated. So that's the 3 additions that Leanne was referring to. That is a combined. I think it was somewhere in the 3.1 range.
3.1 million.
Are there any questions on those 3 before we move on?
Any objections to the approval of those 3? Okay, I'm seeing everyone's okay with those.
Okay. And then PPM 60 is a follow-through of what I mentioned earlier. What this is referring to, this is in line with the Cool, Safe, Dry, Bright presentation I just talked about. That's what the top bullet refers to. It talks about the many impacts. And at this time, those 8 schools, we've identified work that we'd like to defer. Whether in some of the items that we're deferring on this are ones that they can hold out for an additional 5 years. Others are ones that aren't so bad, and we're going to do everything we can in other ways to try to fund them, whether it be through maintenance or through minor projects money. We will continue to keep them on the list. As Leanne said, they are in the forefront of our mind to make sure that we do address all these.
Yeah, and I wanted to try to poll the ISSOC members on this, because I had discussions with Dave and with Leanne about kind of format presentation on future PPMs. For instance, on this one, number 60, Wellington High School's on there for that additional work that'll get deferred, and yet we just approved $863,000 for Wellington that gets some of the stuff done, but none of this stuff. And so my question for ISSOC is whether we would rather see kind of a school by school presentation in the future to say, okay, we need 863 more to take care of these extra items. Okay, I see some thumbs up there. And yet we will now be deferring for Wellington these items, so that we end up with an entire PPM of that particular school showing how much extra is needed to do a certain extra scope and what the remaining scope will be that still needs to be done. I'm seeing we have a couple agreements. Does anybody object to lumping them together on a school by school basis? Okay, I'm hearing none. So I guess Dave and Leanne, that's how we'd like to see them going forward.
We will do it. We actually talked about that. We had a lot of discussion about the formatting. So thank you for the insight on what you'd like it to look like going forward, and we will do that.
Okay. Now on PPM 60, does anyone have an objection to the deferred work going forward some other time? Okay. I'm hearing all accepted. Please continue.
Okay. I don't know, Leanne, do you want to touch on this one? Or basically, these are our two modernization projects, the two new construction projects that will be going before the board next week, Addison, Meisner, and Washington. Both projects needed, well, Leanne, why don't you touch on this, because this has to do with the borrowing as well.
Well, both when we get ready to when we get ready to build a new school, when we're replacing these schools, budgets are developed based on the expected cost. We are limited with state law of cost per student station, which we've talked about before. So the facilities department goes through and they come up with what the budget is going to be. And they go through, I verified that it's within the cost per student station calculation. And then I'm actually getting ready to go to market. We're finalizing the offering statement for a debt issue specifically to pay for these schools as well as a couple more. So we have capacity to increase the borrowing to cover this cost. So it's actually, we've been talking about this for several months. So I knew this was coming. They don't get the money until ISSOC sees it, because these are both on the referendum project list. But more importantly, the board has to approve all these items. Even though ISSOC's approving them, each one goes to the board as a contract, and the board is the ultimate authority to approve them. So the board will be approving each of these or considering approval at their meeting on April 29th. So it is an increase to a budget for projects that were on the referendum list, which is why you need to see them. They're not funded with sales tax. They're funded with other revenue sources.
I've got a question then. So this is about $50 to $60 million worth of construction, and we only missed the budget by $3.4 million? Really?
It's more than that. Addison Meisner alone is over $50 million.
Okay, so yeah, so in other words, our original estimates were really pretty close, considering when the estimates were made compared to now.
Right, and we've made if you go back and look at the budget report that's included, and I can bring that up if you'd like to see it. For each project, it shows what the original budget was, and then cumulative changes, and then this change. We have made other changes to Addison, Meisner, and Washington. So $3 million is not the total delta. That's just the new figure. So I don't want to misrepresent that.
Last year, when last year's cost per student station calculations came out, I believe we came to ISSOC at that time and adjusted the budgets for those cost challenges.
Right.
So this is not the total amount of over our budgets. Okay.
I'm going to scroll back up here for just a minute. The projects funded with other sources, they originally were at $394 million. They're up to $568 million. We're making a $3.4 million change now. The cumulative change is $174 million. There's been some significant changes. Addison Meisner started out as a K-5 and moved to a K-8. So there's been some significant changes in the scope and the rules for how these projects are funded. So we've brought each one of those to you as they've come up, but I didn't want to misrepresent that it was $3 million this time, but we've had some significant changes on these projects, and there's about 15 of them, if I remember correctly. And again, that backup, which is available, I can pull it up in about 30 seconds, where you can see the detail project by project.
Yeah, I don't need to see that. That's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone have an issue with PPM 61? All right. Seeing none, then that's accepted as well.
Okay. And Dave, I guess you're giving an update on, this is going to be very similar to what you did in the earlier presentation, but.
Yeah. And in fact, the facility renewal projects are the same. There's, what do we calculate? We've got 17 facility renewal projects going on right now, all told. We're finishing up some from the first year. These are the second year ones that are on there. As well, Washington and Addison Meisner are going to be starting the Washington. I actually have pictures I only got yesterday, but Washington has already been demolished except for the 2 buildings that will remain. And let me see. Well, the facility room, there was a question that was posted in the chat. I just saw it. The facility renewals, the 17 schools, we've already expedited them. Yes, in fact, thank you for that question. While we were planning on starting the summer work in the summer, around June 5th or thereabouts, we've already moved all of our contractors on site on all of those schools, and they are working within those schools to try to get ahead. They're taking advantage of this empty school situation, and will continue to do so. So we would anticipate that by the end of the summer, let's just pick up for discussion's sake, by the end of July, early August, when we would anticipate to go back to school, that we will have probably doubled the amount of work we would have gotten done over the summer. And the contractors are ready, willing, and able. They were extremely excited. We had a little bit of a stutter where we had to hold them off for a bit while we tried to figure out what we were going to do collectively. And then but that only took a couple of days, and we remobilized, and they're going very, very quickly on that. Next one, security projects. Security projects I mentioned earlier. We've got a lot of projects underway. Our projects are in design, and we're going to keep pushing these things forward. In addition, the item that's not listed there is those 10 single point of entry projects. Each of those are probably in the range of $400,000 worth of an entry feature that's critical to the safety and security of that school. And those are all going to be starting probably within the next month and should be done by the end of the summer. We're saying August. So,
Dave, I want to add something in with the security projects, and you and I hadn't talked about this, so I just dawned on me. With the security projects, there are 2 grants that we've received from the state of Florida related to the tragedy at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. So there's about $8.5 million available. So at some point, we will see a change flow through ISSOC where we're taking things that we've already spent out of sales tax and move it to that grant, because there's deadlines of when that grant money has to be spent, which will give us essentially, we'll be able to do more with the money. So when that happens, I'll point it out to you. But these single point of entries, we're hoping to fund them from the grant as well as other projects. We always go through, in my office, we try to make sure that we spent the most restrictive funds first. Sales tax has been the priority all along. But when the grant comes through and there's a deadline to make sure all the money's spent by December 31st, 2020, we're going to go through and find expenditures that are happening, and we'll be moving them from sales tax into that grant that will free up money for more work. So when that comes up, I'll point it out to you. But I thought it would be good to fit into the conversation right now because we're doing a lot of work with the grants.
Absolutely.
Can any of the grant funds be used for security stuff we've already done?
We're actually there. You can backdate it to a certain point. So yes, we're moving things. There are expenditures that have already been reported to ISSOC that were reported as sales tax. we're going to be moving them to the grant. So you may see expenditures in sales tax actually go down, which would not ever happen under normal circumstances, but we're going to take expenditures out of sales tax and move it into the grant. So when that happens, I'll point it out and let's make sure you know that we've moved things around. But that's what's behind it. We have that extra money available and we want to make sure we're utilizing it.
Good.
Okay.
Show and tell.
All right. These are some of the pictures. Actually, I have some more recent ones, but basically this is a view of the new Verde construction. The project is moving very quickly towards completion. We are planning on how to pack up the holding school. You may recall that Verde got moved into a holding school near Don Estridge. We are planning on how to pack up the holding school and move all those components over here. Although it turns out the holding school doesn't need to move a lot of the things over. They're getting a pretty good amount of new FF&E in this school. And the holding school, I guess that's a reminder, the holding school that is currently housing the kids from Verde, at the end of this school year, we will transition out and move the kids from Addison Meisner, move all of their components into that holding school. We'll move the Verde kids out, move the Addison Meisner kids in.
Dave, I got a couple of questions. David Porter here. The top right picture where it says Verde, is that just the contractor putting that on the building, or is that actually etched into the concrete walls?
It's etched into the concrete walls. It was part of the architectural design feature. The principal has played this principal. He's an excellent principal, Seth Moldovan. He's played a very active role in making sure that this meets all the needs of the school. This school is going from a K-5 to a K-8. So that's a big transition, and he's played a very big role in making sure all expectations are going to be met.
Right. Another question I've got for mobilizing all of your summer work now. Typically, teachers would take their classrooms down and students would take all their stuff out of their desks, and everybody just kind of didn't come back on Monday, not realizing that was going to happen. So how are you working around all of that, and how do you move the Verde holding school over, because classrooms are still fully packed with student and teacher stuff?
Well, I'd like to say that I've got an ironclad plan in place. We are working, the school district as a whole, all the way through the executive cabinet are working, and especially with the academic side, are working to come up with a plan as to how to make available all the spaces to the contractors. So I'm only focusing on the construction perspective. I would say that I only need certain areas in certain schools cleared out. So I personally am only looking at certain parts needing to be packed up as opposed to be the entire school. But that's a process that's ongoing right now, and we anticipate there's a lot of changes going on. I guess I'd like to stress the district is doing yeoman's job on rolling with the punches. Every day we're figuring out something new and trying to make sure that the academic process for kids is paramount, is first and foremost. And everything else, we're taking them as they come and coming up with new ideas each day to try to make things better. And so that's why I say this moving is going to be a bit of a challenge. We kind of anticipated the holding school wasn't going to have a whole lot of moving, because it's really just going to be the classroom stuff for the teachers. So that's not going to be a big deal. But we are anxious about the Addison Meisner site. We do know that that's going to take a lot of work. In addition to that, I think some of you know that there's 26 modular classrooms at Addison Meisner, and we're relocating them up to Jupiter High School. And right now, Jupiter High School is being prepped for all 26. And they have to be moved out right away, as soon as we can. So we are anxious to finalize a plan and square those up, the new construction projects.
So when should we avoid being on I-95 heading from Boca to Jupiter?
Yes, I'm wondering if I can get drones so I can take video of the convoy
Those are modulars, right?
They are.
So they're broken in half. They're big concrete buildings, and they get moved. So that will be, I'm sure it'll be on a weekend.
Yes. It's it's an extensive process. It's going to take quite a long time. As Leanne points out, those concrete modular classrooms are basically two halves stuck together. So we have to unstick them, then seal each side. You put visqueen over the opening and make them ready for transport, and then bring them up, take them off with a crane, put them back together, and seal them back up. So it's even just moving concrete modulars around the school district is quite a process.
Yeah, I think the last numbers I had seen were somewhere between 80 and 100,000. It was the moving and reinstallation cost for a concrete modular that we do.
That is about right for those components. We also have to keep in mind that usually wherever we're putting them, we have to put the infrastructure in to support them. So water, sewer, electric network, concrete slabs, all that stuff has to be done as well. So that ends up adding to the cost. So it can become expensive, but it's certainly a worthwhile effort.
It's less expensive than a building.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yep.
Well, point well taken. Certainly cheaper than building a new structure. Okay, there's another view from the Verde New School. There's the bus loop on the bottom. Next. Okay, South Tech at Odyssey. This is South Tech School is moving into Odyssey, and I think I've talked to you guys about this before. We have constructed a new, I guess it's, for better terms, it's a garage bay, a series of garage bays. Their technical programs, it's got a lot of automotive programs, and instead of just being a garage bay, it's more of a structure that has a garage bay with a classroom attached so that they can go straight from the learning environment right into the practical experience. So we've constructed that. That's basically done. And they're finishing up a lot of the renovations to the interior of the existing Odyssey School, which will now be the new home for South Tech Academy. That is also going this summer. So they will be moving in a month or two. We've got a lot of minor projects, the Carver bleachers. My roof, my Dreyfus roof picture disappeared. I'm sorry, but we've had some
white roofing, isn't it?
What's that?
It's all white roofing.
Yeah. It's snowing, so. But yes, we are working on a lot of individual minor projects, both from the maintenance department as well as our construction facilities construction department, and that keeps on going. Leanne, I don't know. I don't know if we have.
We're not going to show the videos. We have the links, and you can open this document up yourself. We have learned that showing videos on a virtual meeting does not work very well. It gets very pixelized and choppy, and it's not always. Sometimes it works, but more often it's not an enjoyable experience. So these are active links, so that when you open it up, you can view that. You can also, if you choose to go to the school district's webpage, you can scroll down towards the bottom, and there's a link for your Penny at Work. And if you click there, there's a whole host of videos. Our communications department does an amazing job at documenting the work that's being done. So there's lots of videos out there. We'll continue to bring them up at meetings, or at least give you links, but those are available. They're posted on Facebook and Twitter. They do a good job at trying to get that news out to show the work that's being done. So I encourage you to look at those. If you're stuck at home and you want to see something cool, you can look and see the work that's happening at schools.
Yes.
With that, I'd open it up for any last discussions or questions. I do have one last question for the group. The next meeting is currently scheduled for Friday, May 8th, which is in 2 weeks. I would prefer that we push that out a little bit. It would be the data for the end of March. If we can push it out a little bit, I don't think you all want to have 2 meetings back to back that are so close together. And I'm hoping we can get some more economic data out of EDR. And if we are able to be back in the office in June, I may just shift it to June and then have some kind of combination of virtual and depending if the state will allow us to do virtual. But I just don't know when we're going to be opening and be allowed back in the office. But if it's okay with the group, I'd like to postpone that May 8th meeting. And I'll get the documents ready. We'll post them out online. I'm going to start working on them next week. Well, accounting closed on Monday. So I'll be running the data for March 30th. And I'll get it out early, but I'd like to reschedule that meeting if the group is okay with it. I see lots of nodding of heads.
Yeah, I would suggest we go ahead and not do it any sooner than the beginning of June, and in hopes that we will be allowed to meet personally at that time.
Right.
And I think by the end of May or by Memorial Day, you're definitely going to know that answer. And you could then set the meeting to either be in person or virtual.
Okay. I will move forward with that, and as soon as we get some guidance on once we're back in the district, I need legal's going to have to tell us, can we do virtual or does it need to be in person? Because we had to get the governor's executive order to give permission for us to meet virtually. It's not allowed under normal circumstances. So as long as that executive order stays in place, we can continue to do virtual. Otherwise, we would have to be meeting in person. So we're going to want to make sure you all are safe in the building, that you're comfortable coming into the building. So we'll plan for early June at this point. I also need to make sure I can get the room reserved. It's a lot easier to schedule a virtual meeting than it is an in-person meeting, just to get the room and mobilize everyone. But I think that would be the end of the meeting. I will be writing a report up, a draft, and sending it to Mr. Porter, hopefully this afternoon. We want to go ahead and give that report to the school board so they'll have it for the meeting next week, next Wednesday. So I've been asked if I could possibly get that to board clerk by Monday, Tuesday at the latest, but I'm shooting for Monday. So Mr. Porter, I'll send that out to you. It's basically going to summarize the meeting and what we've done. So I'll send that to you for your review. And if the committee is comfortable, we can let him verify and report that back to the board.
Everybody okay with that? Okay, I see lots of nodding heads and thumbs up. Okay, good.
Okay.
All right. Anything else by anybody?
I just once again like to thank all of you for participating in our virtual meeting. So far, I think it has gone very well. I'd encourage you all to give me feedback if there was things that worked well or didn't work well. Even if we don't have another virtual meeting, we're going to have other committee meetings that will happen while we're still living through this virtual world. So please, if you have any comments or suggestions, let me know. And that would be it for me.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Cece, go. Thank you. Can they see you?
Thank you.